Is he still with us? Otherwise, I'm going to start the questions. But I'll take, if anybody's got a burning question immediately, because somebody was wanting to ask a question, I'm really happy to start with audience questions. Otherwise, I'll get us going. Yes, there's one right in the middle. So can I keep your hand up, and then a microphone is going to come to you, straight in the middle. I have loads of questions I can ask you, but I think we should let the audience lead us. Thank you.
Hi. Hello. Can you hear me? Yes. I'm Claudia, and I've got a question for Goparity. Nuno? Yeah. I love this so much, and I've heard about other sustainable investment companies before that haven't succeeded, and I am very interested in investing in the future. But my question, I obviously would love to do it in a way that has an impact, but my question is it, how do you compare, how do you explain to someone that wants to invest in like SP 500, is that what it's called, the big one? How do you say, like, what's the difference in like your return when you invest with Goparity?
So is it a risk? Is it risk? You're really at risk and return. So risk and return. Just those two simple things. Every investor wants the magic solution to. Also,
without taking into consideration we just heard with the true price, because then that changes the whole story. But just in like the today now.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for the question.
Should I go now?
Yes, please do.
Thanks for the question. Actually, I was sitting there and I was thinking I didn't talk about return, like what exactly are we talking about when we talk about return? So on the one hand, about risk, our loans are always capital at risk. We do take a big number of risk mitigation measures, but it's capital at risk. So there's always the possibility that you will lose part or whole of your money in each of the investments we do. So the way we work around that is trying to apply as many principles of financial literacy as possible, like the typical, don't place all the eggs on the same basket, don't invest more than a certain percentage of your assets, these kinds of things. And when it comes to return, we do it in two ways, of course. So comparing with someone that wants to invest in an SP 500, what we do is, first of all, we're not that low in interest. So the average on our portfolio right now is 5.73% per year, which is, I think, already quite a decent return. Which also means that just because it's sustainability, it doesn't mean you're not going to make money out of it. The saddest part is on the term, actually. That is, sustainability does require long-term thinking. So most of our loans are 4-year or more loans, and we realize that when we do a 2-year loan or a 1-year loan, like a bridge funding thing, then it just flies out of the platform in a question of minutes. The longer the term, the less people are willing to invest. And the other side to the return question is the impact and measuring the impact. Okay, so you put your money on SP 500, you have no idea what they're doing with your money. What impact are you actually creating? And it's probably more negative than positive, what you're getting out of the money you have invested. And in our case, we do track the impact and we do share the impact. So you as a user, you can go to your platform, to your user area, and it's even kind of gamified the carbon part of it, where you can, you're a sprout, and then you're a small plant, you're a tree, you're a garden, you're a forest, and yeah. So this is what we try to do.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I will keep looking up. So stick your hand up if you have oh, there's already another question. I'm about to get to my question. Well, it's the afternoon. People have sat and listened to a lot of things. I think it's really important that they get their chance.
So I have the same question. I'm here.
Oh,
I have another question for you. So what I'm understanding is from your app, you are appealing to the global north to loan money with interest to the global south by continuing extractivist systems of profiting off the global south.
Sorry.
No, please. Very good question.
Yeah, so that's an interesting way to put it. I wouldn't say so. I would say, first of all, we're not only working with the Global South. Actually, we fund a lot of projects that are happening in Europe and in the Northern Hemisphere, and we have just launched in Canada. So it's not only the Global South that we need to work in. We also need to change the status quo of sustainability and the economy in the North. And we do a lot of analysis on the impact of the projects that we have, and we work with local installers. So you can think that. You can also think that we are providing funding for installers for SMEs in Colombia and in Kenya and in Uganda and in all these countries to actually have access to finance in more favorable ways than they would get from their local institutions. And you can think of Brazil as an example. If you're a company, you ask for money to install solar panels in your factory in Brazil, you're going to get maybe 20% per year loan rates. If you can get money with someone from Europe, you're probably going to get a 7-8% interest rate. So I'd love to talk to you more about that once we're done. But I deeply believe we are providing access to finance to those who still don't have it. And hopefully, one day, we won't be needed. Just like the Ministry of Environment or the Department of Sustainability in any company, because we won't be needed anymore, and it's already transversal, and it's the mainstream thing. Right now, this is the best thing that we can do.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Hirra a question, and then I'll come back to the floor if there's other questions. I want to ask something to Maurits also, which in a way is sort of in the risk. What did you call your chart from the idea to
the Goodwin curve?
The Goodwin curve.
Yeah.
So it is a really hot topic politically right now.
Yeah.
I think it's being used, this idea of private car ownership, as what they call a wedge issue, isn't it? Sort of really being used to be one of these things that divides us rather than unites us. How do you deal with that? I mean, the political climate right now, how does that impact your work? Do you try to meet that head on, or do you sort of stay down in the community level and try not to engage at the...
No, so I would say we have to engage at the political level, because ultimately it's not down to individuals to change their way of doing. I mean, one of the criticisms we get with going car free, the one where we got 10 drivers, is, you're putting it all on individuals. And my counter argument to that is I never put it on the individuals. What I'm showing is we need to get new stories and new ways of doing things to be able to make possible what people think is currently impossible. Obviously, we campaign for, like I said, London's expansion of the ultra-low emission zone or Birmingham's clean air zone. My ultimate goal with this is, and I'm very open about this, and I make it very clear to political leaders when I'm talking to them, is we need a pay-as-you-drive scheme that covers the whole of the UK, because otherwise you just get small cities charging something different there, something different there. You want a national scheme that connects it all. And I also want to see a national traffic reduction target from the government. So this government that we've currently got, the Conservative government, has been really dishonest. And, what I've loved about the projects at Fixing the Future is that they have been quite tech-centered and solutions-driven, which is very optimistic. But realistically, we also need to reduce demand. And I think that is sort of like the unsaid piece of the pie often. We need to stop consuming as much as we do. We need to change our patterns. And I genuinely believe the way to do that is to tell new stories, find new messengers, and show how it's a better... this isn't about taking stuff away from people. Reduce your consumption, but actually live a better life, a better quality of life by doing that. And I've kind of said all the co-benefits that come with walking, wheeling, cycling, using public transport. But it goes beyond that. It's also about, the clothes we wear, the food we eat. It kind of touches on every part of our life. I do ultimately think it's a better way of life. And that's what I'm trying to sell, I guess.
Thank you. And Maurits, in a way, the true pricing question sits across both those ideas of the individual. You're saying that by making the true price of something visible, an individual consumer could choose to pay that price gap difference, and yet clearly it's a approach and a form of thinking that's trying to make an intervention at the systems level. But in your work, how do you balance those two ideas? Where is it about individual responses and actions, and where is it about the intervention at the system level?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, at some point we need, I think, on a system level, we need governments to step in. That's also one of our goals, to influence national and international governments to adopt these principles. But to be able to do that, you need a critical mass of supporters. You need individuals that show that they support your idea. So you need the bottom-up initiatives. You need the kind of bit crazy entrepreneurs and people working at corporates or governments that believe in such an idea and that open a shop and show the true price in this case and go for it. And with that, you gain political support. That's actually what we have seen in the Netherlands this summer. In our parliament, there was an idea adopted by the Dutch parliament to investigate the opportunities to implement true pricing in the Netherlands. So we see that seed has been planted and it's growing.
Amazing. It's interesting when you see there was an amazing piece of research done, and it was in fact the British Fashion Council, who you would think might not have an interest in saying this, but who put out information saying that there are enough clothes in circulation now to clothe 6 generations of the entire world population. So we have enough clothing in circulation today for everybody that lives on the planet for the next 100 years. And it was the British Fashion Council saying that, which is sort of an interesting intervention at that place where you say, which is what actually are we going to do about reducing demand. Nuno, just on that same point though, where does your work sit? Goparity is a systemic intervention quite clearly, but you're also appealing literally to the individual private bank customer to then be part of a systemic transformation. Which side are you sort of leaning into more?
Well, I think it's more about the power of the individual.
Okay.
So it's of course we're asking for a systemic change, but if we didn't believe in the power of individuals and the power of collective action, we wouldn't have started Goparity, and I wouldn't have started Copernico, and actually everything that I do goes around the idea of democratizing power, be it the energy, power as in energy, or power as in economy. I'm quite fond of the concept of sufficiency that you were kind of both approached, and I do think if we do less, we can benefit. And it's not just about choosing. Like, I'm all in favor of green products and sustainable products. That's totally okay. But always the best option is not to buy if you don't really need something. And once that happens, and you actually have also generated more savings, and you're going to be financially more stable. So I see a lot of benefits coming out of changing the actual lifestyle of individuals, and this is why they are our main focus.
Well, that's interesting. Just coming back to the point that I made, so we can say there's enough clothing in circulation for the next 100 years, but it's also true that 1 in 6 people in the global workforce work in the apparel industry, some part from the crop production, the textiles, the actual clothing fabrication. So I think we have to be careful as well about sort of sitting here saying, the right thing is for instance, on clothing, there is a point of view saying, do people like us need to buy any more new clothes? But actually, what about the workers who, in many countries, that's the only stable work for women, albeit often very dangerous and very poorly paid work. So there are so many problems in that system. I think there had been another hand that was, yes, right in the middle that was put up, and then I'll come back to some of my other questions. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is about true pricing. I was really inspired by your final quote about imagine a world where the market price is the true price. What is at this moment the major issue to achieve this goal? Imagine that all countries in the world agree on implementing a true price. What would be the problem, or who would be against it?
Yeah, I was wondering that. Who is against? Where in the system do you meet the resistance to true pricing?
Well, where to start? I think most companies who now have a lot of power, so to say, in the market, and they have good profits, obviously it's a bit of a risky thing for them. So maybe they lose their competitive edge if they turn out to be not so sustainable and have a high true price. But if you look at it also from a different perspective, true pricing is, well, it's a simple concept maybe, but behind it is a lot of data, is a lot of calculations. It's quite complex. So for sure, the data availability is a huge challenge as well. And then I think it's a relatively new concept. So yeah, why isn't it already implemented everywhere? I think most people don't even know about it. So that's also one limiting factor.
Thank you.
It's actually something that in the renewable energy space we've used for a very long time.
Oh, yeah?
Not the true price, but the externalities thing, because we always had this thing that, yeah, but solar power is more expensive or wind power is more expensive, and that's because you're not including the externalities that don't stop there. It's also about the consequences of not using and the consequences of emitting and all of this. So I was very happy to get to know your project.
Yeah, thanks.
We have another question here.
Actually,
Yeah.
I wanted to make more of a comment, if you don't mind, back to true price, because you say it's a relatively new thing. 25 years ago, I was involved in what was called dolphin-friendly tuna. So it used to be they fished on dolphins to catch tuna. And it doesn't matter, but we managed to persuade Heinz, okay, to do dolphin-friendly tuna that was more expensive. And actually, instantly, they sold more tuna, and guess what? All the other companies went dolphin-friendly. So it's how we package this to price, to me, is sort of the issue, because to your point, they don't understand it. But it was interesting sort of with the dolphin-friendly thing. It's like, oh, I've got dolphin-friendly and dolphin-unfriendly, you know? So I don't know what it is. Maybe you need to have an amoeba-friendly T-shirt or something. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks. Well, I think it's interesting because what we're partly talking about is sort of trying to normalize new kinds of behavior, and this session is called sort of changing the mindset. And Hirra, in your work, it was so interesting, the visual aspect, sort of taking people on that journey of the imagination, clearly played a really, really critical role. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, how do you help people? I mean, also, who does those images? How do you bring those images to life? You say people kind of co-create those visions,
Yeah.
but actually, do you employ artists to then do these renders? And at what point are you bringing that in? It's a bit like what I was asking Michele to comment on, that there's a lot of conversation about this idea that working with communities and working in this space of civic imagination is really, really important, but it's not a necessarily completely natural shift for lots of people to suddenly be asked, you know, in your community, now imagine what a better future looks like.
Yeah.
So how does that creative work happen? And then I'm interested in asking similar things sort of with True Price. What else needs to happen to bring that vision to life? And the same for you, Nuno. But yeah, how do we stimulate the imagination and make it visible? What could be?
Well, I think I think what's really important with community work is to understand that they're not experts when it comes to city planning and transport planning, but what they are experts in is their own lived experience of the city and how they use it and how they go about. So that's really valuable information there and then that they're bringing to the table. who does the actual pictures there. We have an architectural visualizer, but he's there in the community workshops as people are kind of sketching their ideas, saying, this is where I pick up my kids from school, this is what really annoys me when lorries park here, or if I'm cycling, or if I'm pushing my pushchair with my baby in it, I find it really difficult to cross here. All of these ideas are being fed in to the plan. We build consensus. But I also think it's really important to not put limitations down on people's imagination. So, the architectural visualizer, through his work experience, he might think an idea is ludicrous because he's like, there's all sorts of reasons why that would not be possible. But I think sometimes it's just go with it, go beyond what you think is possible. Because the other thing is we explicitly said to people, imagine a car-free future. So we didn't say, imagine this in 5 years' time, imagine this in 10 years' time, where people start thinking about, is this realistic, is this not, how would we? They start thinking about all the negatives or all the things that could stop this from happening. So we say, imagine a car-free future, what would it look like? And then it's about, right, so now we've built this utopian world, what needs to happen to get there? And obviously, like I said, the realities are difficult. The politics is really difficult. We're living in increasingly polarizing times. People are using this traffic reduction agenda really cynically. But as the gentleman in the audience said, part of this is how we're selling this back and how we're packaging it. So I think with car-free cities, we did something really bold. And we got a little bit of pushback. People were like, well, if you don't mean car-free, why are you using the term car-free? And part of it is because it's to demonstrate the radical shift we know we need. If we said low traffic or something a little bit softer, something with a bit of innuendo, healthy streets, livable streets, we do all of that. It implies it's the status quo, but just less. Yeah. Whereas what we're trying to do is, no, we need to completely change the thinking there. And so, yeah, I hope that answered some of that.
And Maurits, because it's quite a complex idea to present to somebody, maybe, let's say, when they're buying their not very lovely looking cheese sandwich at the lunch canteen, because actually would feel like you'd have to have had an education campaign previous to that, because on your slide that had the whole list of externalities that's being taken into account, the environmental and the social, to sort of reduce all of that to, and that added 6 cents to your, or whatever, to your cup of coffee today. That's a lot of information to reduce. So how do you bring the idea to life, or what do you think is missing? Do you think it's, how do you make it visual for people, make it understandable?
I think the funny thing about true pricing is actually what we see in the project we do, is that in principle, so to say, it's a very intuitive idea. People seem to immediately understand what it is.
Interesting.
However, if you then dive into the details, then obviously tons and tons of questions arise. And also the honest answer is that, well, this company I work for is about 100 people. Most of us are just nerds, really good at calculating stuff. But not yet artists and not yet storytellers. So we still have a lot to improve there. Yeah.
And Nuno, I mean, with impact investing, in a way, it's all about the story at some level, the story that you can tell, at the end. So how do you sort of bring that in? And when you're assessing projects, I mean, a little bit back to the sort of risk framework. So a project comes to you to want to use Goparity for the loan. How are you going to kind of how do you start to imagine that? The impact of that project in a story kind of way? And I just want to check, my clock is saying 0 minutes, but is that for real? Somebody? I have 5 more minutes. Okay. I vaguely thought the session ran till 6:30. No. Did we change the timing? Okay, you're telling me 5 minutes. Great. Okay. And then I'm going to see. Oh, and also there's 2 more questions. So a first question, and I'm going to tell you 2 questions at the back.
Yeah, so I'm going to be very fast. So there's projects where it's very easy to anticipate what's the impact that they're going to have, and they don't really need a story. When we talk about, for example, solar power, then of course most of the times there's a beautiful story around it about the founder or the community or something, but solar power is a very clear case of a positive impact if you think about it in European geographies. But then there's a whole lot of other stories, and that's something that we also need to work on. Not on the previous part, we call it a triple due diligence. So we look at the project, we look at the company, and we look at the impact. And it's not about storytelling there. It's about risk analysis and impact assessment. And then the stories come after. And the same story I told about Uganda, I could have told about the Lisbon School of Music, where we had, which is more than 100 years old. It was falling into pieces. And then they asked for funding from Goparity to switch their conventional lighting to LED lighting. And people there, everybody knew it was on a death spiral. But then suddenly, one day people got to the office and students got to classes, and they had quality lighting. So actual good lighting, not blinking anymore, not a few of them not working, other working. And suddenly there was a general feeling of hope. And this also came to us from the school director that said suddenly people, they were in a better mood because they felt, okay, this is not just dying. Someone is investing here. We're making this a better place for us to work. But the stories are the hardest part to catch, and usually they come after we have funded the project.
Okay, so there were two hands up at the very back. Is it one question? Can I take both the questions? So one at the back and then one here. So we'll listen to both the questions, and then we're going to have to do a pretty rapid fire. Oh, hold on. 3 questions, maybe.
It works.
We're going to take all 3 then. So starting straight in front, then at the back.
I thought you guys forgot about me. That's nice. I didn't have necessarily a question. It was more of a comment for Goparity. The majority of the here.
Sorry.
Hi.
Okay.
The majority of the young people that start working nowadays, we need a bank account, and the money that is there is not money that we're using to invest, right? This is not money. We don't have enough money to start investing in projects, regardless of if they're good or bad. But this money is still being used, right, to finance a lot of things that we don't agree with. And so there are banks like Triodos, there are banks like Tomorrow Bank. Have you guys considered some sort of collaboration with these banks for people that have their money there that maybe cannot use it yet, but when they can, they would go and invest in projects like this? And in the meantime, it is being used for a good reason, a good cause.
Can you hold the thought? I want to take thank you for that. And yes, it's good to reference banks like Triodos. There are some good banks, a few in the world. So the question at the back, and then the question in the middle, and then we'll go for our panelists.
Hello, my name's Kay. I'm a university student. Thank you for your presentations. My question...
Can you speak super close into the microphone?
Oh yeah, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, my name's Kay. I'm a university student, and my question is for True Price. We're working with a student climate coalition, and one of our campaigns that we've been focused on is plant-based universities. At our university, we've had a lot of resistance from our student dining around converting all dining options to not include meat. So I guess my question is, if we wanted to implement True Price at our university to kind of show that it would be popular to have less meat options, how would you recommend going about that? And is there someone we could contact or get in touch with? And for other university students who might be looking to do the same thing, do you have advice for that? Thank you.
Okay, so that's going to be for you on universities who want to take meat at their campaigns. And then the third one,
And my question is for both of you. Scientists from all fields have been warning for decades that our current economic system needs to shift away from perpetual, endless economic growth if we want to avoid societal collapse. Since your company, or both of your companies, promises to generate profits off of making the economy more green or sustainable, what steps do you have in place to prevent your company from becoming more complicit in the system of exponential growth, if you have any steps put in place?
It's a great question. So, relationship with banks, with the better banks, is that something? True price in universities, and then I think we'll take that last point to all of you actually. Sort of how do you not become complicit in the current economic system? To wrap up, go.
So the question about banks. Thanks a lot. That's a really spot on question, and it speaks to us in two different manners. First of all, the reason we started Goparity was out of own experience. When I lived in Brussels and when I lived in Spain, I was a client with Triodos. And when I moved back to Portugal, there was no ethical banking, and it was a peak crisis. So banks were everything but ethical in Portugal at that moment. It was a lot of stuff going on, and some banks ended up even closing. So this is the first thing. The second is, you just touched our roadmap. So we have tried to work with banks. It was not possible to work with those banks, but it's within our roadmap to become one ourselves. So hopefully we will be able to be that bank account where you know that your money is sitting if you have not decided to use it. And about the capacity to invest, that's why we lowered the investments with Goparity to €5, to make it as accessible as possible for everyone to be able to invest, even if you're a student or a recent graduate.
Thanks, Nuno. So Maurits, for a university, how could they collaborate with you to put true pricing on their meat versus non-meat products?
Yeah, it's actually what we have done a couple of times already, not with universities yet, but in other situations with catering companies, where we have shown the true price of vegan alternatives versus the normal alternative. For example, for oat milk cappuccino versus a cow milk cappuccino. So it's one way to inform your students, I guess, to make a shift, and it's quite effective. It's kind of an inclusive concept as well. You not just rule out everybody instantly. And yeah, if you wanna collaborate, feel free to reach out, and we can definitely help with the calculations and other stuff.
And just while we're with you then for this closing comment, how do you avoid becoming complicit in an economic system that suggests we can have perpetual growth when we know that that's an impossibility?
Yeah, I would like to say two things about that. First of all, I think we don't promise to make a lot of profit while being green. I think a lot of companies who will introduce true pricing will not make a lot of profit anymore, which is a good thing then, I would say. And second of all, I think the question is here, how do you define growth? And that's the underlying question that we try to solve here. Maybe the problem is not that we aim for perpetual growth, because growth is in itself something beautiful, I think. But how we define growth is the problem, I would say. We define growth in a very narrow financial way, where we just leave out destruction of the planet. Well, if you take into account actually the health of the planet and the health of the people in how you define and measure growth, then I think focusing on growth is very natural and a very good thing to do.
Nuno, I'll come to you next, then Hirra, I'm going to give you the last word. So, how do you not become complicit?
So about this same question, of course, one of the big issues is the resource sustainability of all this, because if growth, as you said, could not be a problem, but this type of growth, the eternal economic growth that relies on using resources, is an actual problem. So, as a principle, we trace it back to the definition of sustainability. You cannot spend more than what the planet is capable of regenerating. But the most important thing for us within that scope is accountability. So we are fully transparent in what we fund. We provide as much information as we can, and we are very engaged with our investors in many different ways. For example, one example that I think you will appreciate is we have done solar power in Brazil our first project in Brazil. And for that project, it was solar power on the rooftop of a shopping mall. And we transparently communicated it. We had a backlash of people saying, but how can you fund this if you know it's a shopping mall that is below those solar panels? And so this is the level of scrutiny that we are subject to by our users. So that also makes us always be more and more alert and improve on what we do. Not only we did that, and one of the things we have as a vision for the company is around community ownership. So I'm currently still the largest shareholder of Goparity, but we already have more than 1,000 shareholders that are people that wanted to take part in owning a piece. In the end, they're owning a piece of the platform that they use, and you can have more scrutiny and more engagement than that. So we want to create a different type of company, one that in the end will be community owned.
Community ownership and cooperative ownership is certainly one answer. Hirra, I want to give the last word to you.
I just wanted to very quickly say, on the point around getting universities to kind of change the offerings in their canteen, I spoke mainly about car-free cities here, but we do actually do other projects at Possible, and one of them is called menu flipping, and we're working with 3 universities in, Manchester University, Leeds University, and an inner city college in London to basically do menu flipping, and basically in 2024 we can say more about that, but do get in touch with me because I'd love to hear what you're doing. So Possible is a registered charity, so we most of our funding comes from grants and stuff. So I'm going to kind of take the question as to how do we ensure we're not complicit in perpetuating harm in society, to broaden it out from just the economic focus. So we're trying to be an anti-oppressive society, which is organization, which is really difficult in an oppressive society. And the things we've kind of brought in are, we have a pay ratio. So I'm a co-director. We have a co-director model, first of all. So there is no CEO. There's 3 co-directors, and we share power within the organization. We have a pay ratio to 3-to-1. So the co-directors, the lowest paid person, will only earn a third of what we earn, compared to we will only earn more than 3 times, which is, I think is incredibly progressive. And I know we've got our staff is unionized, and I know they're pushing us to go even further. That's where we are right now. That's some of the kind of internal work that we're doing. There's also the external stuff in terms of our campaigns, and I think key there is, Possible is a registered charity, so there's a level of professionalism and professionalization which can sometimes corrode some of the activism, and we need to continuously make sure that we've got that balance right. And so some of the stuff that we're doing is making sure that we're hiring people who are on the front lines and doing the work. So when I was head of Car-Free Cities, part of my job was management, but my campaigners were on the ground. They were embedded in those communities, and really who I hired were community organizers to be able to take this work forward, pay them the wage to be able to do that work. And the other thing is to go to where communities are. Instead of expecting people to come to us, we're going to where they are. So when we did these car-free visions, we held those in churches, in libraries, in mosques, in outside schools. It's don't expect people to turn up to your event. Go to where they're already congregating and what they're already doing. And then the final thought that I had was on economics and things like that. I think we're really, really supportive of what we've called the donut economics model. And that's, I'm sure lots of people will know about that. And it is all about rethinking growth, living within the planetary bounds. And so I guess my final comment is that, of course, we need to know and we need to believe there is enough in this world for everyone to live a really high quality of life. But there isn't enough for everyone to live the kinds of life we've been living in the global north. And that is a huge shift we need to make. And it's for us in the global north to kind of get our heads around that and start acting.
Perfect. Perfect. Great place to end. Thank you.